get joy thinking about what he's done for me. I get joy thinking about what he's done for me. It's in my hands, my feet, I'm talking about what he's done for me. I get joy just thinking about what he's done for me. I get joy thinking about what he's done.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome again to our Wednesday Bible study. This time we're continuing in our series, The Life of David, King of the Jews. Picking up where we left off, because David had Uriah killed, he is to repay the life fourfold. We've already seen 3 of his sons taken from him. We saw Bathsheba's baby died. We saw Amnon was killed by Absalom. And then we saw Absalom was killed in battle. The next son to die is Adonijah. Taken from 1 Kings chapter 1, verses 50 through 52. And Adonijah feared because of Solomon and rose and went and caught hold on the horns of the altar. And it was told Solomon, saying, Behold, Adonijah feareth King Solomon. For lo, he had caught hold of the horns of the altar, saying, Let King Solomon swear unto me today that he will not slay his servant with the sword. And Solomon said, If he will show himself a worthy man, there shall not a hair of him fall to the earth. But if wickedness shall be found in him, he shall die. Now, in 1 Kings chapter 1, David is dying, and there's a struggle for the throne. He promised it to Solomon, but Adonijah proclaimed himself as king. When David found out about it, he immediately told Nathan the prophet to anoint Solomon king. As soon as Adonijah finds out that Solomon is king, he runs to the tabernacle and grabs hold of the horns of the altar, begging for mercy. Solomon grants his request, but warns him that any more rebellious acts will be met with his swift execution. So Adonijah has been given a second chance. Let's see what he does with it. Having been spared after an unsuccessful attempt to become king, Adonijah commits another crime against the throne by asking for one of David's wives to be his own. This Solomon could not let pass. This Adonijah asked Solomon's mother to ask him to give Adonijah one of David's wives. And Solomon said, well, why don't you just ask for the kingdom as well? Because in that culture and in that time, the wife of the king elevated your status. So if Adonijah was to get David's wife, it would elevate his status. Solomon said, that's enough. I gave you a break because you tried to take the throne. Now you asking for my father's wife. 1 Kings chapter 2, verse 23 and 24. Then King Solomon sware by the Lord, saying, God do so to me and more also, if Adonijah have not spoken this word against his own life. Now therefore, as Jehovah liveth, which had established me, and set me on the throne of David my father, and who had made me a house, as he promised, Adonijah shall be put to death this day. And King Solomon sent by the hand of Benaiah, the son of Jehoiada, and he fell upon him that he died. All right, this is the 4th son of David to die because of the death of Uriah and the prophecy that God sent through Nathan the prophet. Bathsheba's baby died. His son Amnon died. Remember, he's the one that raped his half-sister. Absalom died in battle, and now Adonijah is dead. So when you look again at the punishment prophecy, it said that this child will die. Talking about the child that David had with Bathsheba, definitely he died. David is to repay fourfold. 4 sons died. We've also seen that the sword did not depart from his house, as Absalom killed Amnon. Absalom was killed in a revolt, and Solomon killed Adonijah. we'll now see that evil will indeed rise up against him from his own house in the person of Absalom, who tries to take the kingship for himself. This is the second brother that's trying to take the throne when David promised it to Solomon. Look at Absalom's rebellion in 2 Samuel chapter 15. Now, what we have done, I need to get the timeline in order. What we have done, we have jumped ahead to find the 4 deaths of David's sons, but we were not following in chronological order. We just went ahead to find those sons to show the fulfillment of the prophecy. Now we're picking up back where we left off, 2 Samuel chapter 15, starting at verse 1. And it came to pass after this, that Absalom prepared him chariots and horses and 50 men to run before him. And Absalom rose up early and stood beside the way of the gate. And it was so that when any man that had a controversy came to the king for judgment, then Absalom called unto him and said, Of what city art thou? And he said, Thy servant is one of the tribes of Israel. And Absalom said unto him, See, thy matters are good and right, but there's no man deputed of the king to hear thee. Absalom said, Moreover, oh, that I were made judge in the land, that every man which had any suit or cause might come unto me, and I would do him justice. And it was so, that when any man came nigh to him to do him obeisance, he put forth his hand and took him and kissed him. Or whenever that man would come and greet him humbly, he would reach forth and kiss him. Verse 6, And on this manner did Absalom to all Israel that came to the king for judgment. So Absalom stole the hearts of the men of Israel. Again, another part of this punishment prophecy. David is to repay fourfold. The child is going to die. The sword shall not depart from his house, and evil will rise up against him from his own house. So prior to Absalom's death, he tried to take the kingship. Remember, God keeps his promises. These stories are not just to entertain us, but they are to enlighten us and let us know that it doesn't matter how long it takes, God keeps his promises. The next part of this prophecy, this punishment prophecy, I like to call it, he will take thy wives and give them to thy neighbor, who will lie with them in the sight of the sun. I don't know if you remember in the text when it happened, Nathan told David, God said, you did this in secret, but I'm going to take your wives and give them to others in the light of day. 2 Samuel chapter 16, beginning at verse 20. Absalom said unto Ahithophel, Give us your advice. What shall we do? And Ahithophel answered, Lie with your father's concubines, whom he left to take care of the palace. Then all Israel will hear that you have made yourself a stench in your father's nostrils, and the hands of everyone with you will be strengthened. So they pitched a tent for Absalom on the roof, and he lay with his father's concubines in the sight of all Israel. This is a truly devious and evil person. So, again, look at the prophecy. David is to repay fourfold. The child of Bathsheba's and their indiscretion would die. The sword shall not depart from his house. Evil will rise up against him from his own house, and his wives will be taken and given to his neighbor. Now, again, in our study, we jumped ahead in David's life to see the events that showed the fulfillment of God's punishment prophecy. Along the way, there were numerous trials in his life that were also a part of the process of making this great king in Israel, in the history of God's people. Look at some of David's trials. We remember back in 2 Samuel chapter 13 that Amnon forced himself on his half-sister Tamar after heeding bad advice. Absalom plotted to kill him. 2 Samuel chapter 13, verse 28. Now Absalom had commanded his servants, saying, Mark ye now, when Amnon's heart is merry with wine, and when I say unto you, smite Amnon, then kill him. Fear not, have not I commanded you? Be courageous, and be valiant. And the servants of Absalom did unto Amnon as Absalom had commanded. Then all the king's sons arose, and every man got him up on his mule and fled. And it came to pass, while they were in the way, that tidings came to David, saying, Absalom hath slain all the king's sons, and there is not one of them left. See how fast a lie will travel? Only one that was killed was Amnon, but word got back to David before his sons got back that all of his sons had been killed. Verse 31. Then the king arose and tare his garments and lay on the earth, and all his servants stood by with their clothes rent. And Jonadab, the son of Shimeah, David's brother, y'all remember Jonadab? He's the one told Amnon this plot to get Tamar to lay with him. Pretend you're sick. Tell your father you want Tamar to come and minister to you, and when she comes, then you can take her. This is this guy, Jonadab. And he answered and said, Let not my lord suppose that they have slain all the young men, the king's sons, for Amnon only is dead. For by the appointment of Absalom, this hath been determined from the day that he forced his sister Tamar. Absalom had been plotting his death for 2 years. Verse 33. Now therefore let not my lord the king take the thing to his heart, to think that all the king's sons are dead, for Amnon only is dead. But Absalom fled. And the young man that kept the watch lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, there came much people by the way of the hillside behind him. And Jonadab said unto the king, Behold, the king's sons come. As thy servant said, so it is. And it came to pass, as soon as he had made an end of speaking, that behold, the king's sons came, and lifted up their voice and wept. The king also and all his servants wept very sore. But Absalom fled and went to Talmai, the son of Ammihud, king of Geshur. And David mourned for his son every day. So Absalom fled and went to Geshur, and was there 3 years. And the soul of King David longed to go forth unto Absalom, but for he was comforted concerning Amnon, seeing he was dead. All right, originally David thinks all of his sons are dead. What a painful thought. And he now mourns the loss of Absalom, who has fled, and Amnon, who has been killed. Verse 14, chapter 14, 2 Samuel, verse number 1. Now Joab, the son of Zeruiah, perceived that the king's heart was toward Absalom. And Joab sent to Tekoa, and fetched thence a wise woman, and said unto her, I pray thee, feign thyself to be a mourner, and put on now mourning apparel, and anoint thyself with oil. But be as a woman that hath a long time mourned for the dead. And come to the king, and speak on this manner unto him. So Joab put the words in her mouth. And when the woman of Tekoa spake to the king, she fell on her face to the ground, and did obeisance, and said, Help, O king. And the king said unto her, What aileth thee? And she answered, I am indeed a widow woman, and my husband is dead. And the handmaid had 2 sons, and they 2 strove together in the field. And there was none to part them, but the one smote the other, and slew him. And behold, the whole family is risen against me, against thy handmaiden. And they said, Deliver him that smote his brother, that we may kill him for the life of his brother whom he slew. And we will destroy the heir also. And so they shall quench my coal which is left, and shall not leave to my husband neither name nor remainder upon the earth. The king said unto the woman, Go to that house, and I will give charge concerning thee. And the woman of Tekoa said unto the king, My lord, O king, the iniquity be upon me and on my father's house, and the king and his throne shall be guiltless. And the king said, Whosoever saith aught unto thee, bring him to me, and he shall not touch thee any more. Then said she, I pray thee, let the king remember Jehovah thy God, that thou wouldest not suffer the revengers of blood to destroy any more, lest they destroy my son. And he said, As Jehovah liveth, there shall not one hair of thy son fall to the earth. Then the woman said, Let that handmaid, I pray thee, speak one word unto my lord the king. And he said, Say on. And the woman said, Wherefore then hast thou thought such a thing against the people of God? For the king doth speak this thing as one which is faulty, in that the king doth not fetch home again his banished. Okay, now here we see the purpose that Joab was trying to accomplish. He sent this woman with a made-up story and said, one of my sons killed his brother, and now all the people are asking for vengeance. And if they kill my son, then my husband's name and his legacy will be wiped from the earth. David said, don't worry about it. Nobody's going to bother. And she said, well, let me ask you just one more thing. Why don't you bring Absalom home? You didn't bring your son home that was banished. Verse 14, for we must needs die, and we are as water spilt on the ground, which cannot be gathered up again. Neither doth God respect any person. Yet doth he devise means that his banished be not expelled from him. God is always looking to bring us back to him. Verse 15. Now, therefore, that I am come to speak of this thing unto my lord the king, it is because the people have made me afraid. And the handmaid said, I will now speak unto the king. It may be that the king will perform the request of his handmaid. For the king will hear to deliver his handmaid out of the hand of the man that will destroy me and my sons together out of the inheritance of God. Then thy handmaid said, the word of my lord the king shall now be comfortable. For as an angel of God, so is my lord the king, to discern good and bad. Therefore, Jehovah thy God will be with thee. Then the king answered and said unto the woman, hide not from me, I pray thee, the thing that I shall ask thee. And the woman said, let my lord the king now speak. And the king said, is not the hand of Joab with thee in all of this? Look how wise David is. He knows exactly where this is coming from. And the woman answered and said, as thy soul liveth, my lord the king, none can turn to the right hand or to the left from aught that my lord the king hath spoken. For thy servant Joab, he bade me, and he put all these words in the mouth of thy handmaiden, to fetch about this form of speech. Hath thy servant Joab done this thing, and my Lord is wise, according to the wisdom of an angel of God, to know all things that are in the earth. The king said unto Joab, behold, now I have done this thing. Go therefore, bring the young man Absalom again. And Joab fell to the ground on his face and bowed himself and thanked the king. And Joab said, today thy servant knoweth that I have found grace in thy sight, my lord, O king, in that the king hath fulfilled the request of his servant. So Joab arose and went to Geshur and brought Absalom to Jerusalem. All right. Joab knew that David wanted to see Absalom, but he was guilty of premeditated murder, and he could not be pardoned without David showing partiality. So now he makes up this story about these two brothers that were fighting, and one killed the other one. And he made and he sent it to David, and David pronounces a pardon for the other son. And so now the woman said, well, why don't you do that for your son? All this was Joab's plan from the beginning. Now the king could not be accused of doing something that he would not do for the common man. chapter 14, verse 28. So Absalom dwelt 2 full years in Jerusalem, and saw not the king's face. Therefore Absalom sent for Joab to have sent him to the king, but he would not come to him. And when he sent again the second time, he would not come. Therefore he said unto his servant, See, Joab's field is near mine, and he hath barley there. Go and set it on fire. And Absalom's servants set the field on fire. Then Joab arose and came to Absalom unto his house, and said unto him, Wherefore have thy servants set my field on fire? And Absalom answered Joab, Behold, I sent unto thee, saying, Come hither, that I may send thee to the king, to say, Wherefore am I come from Geshur? It had been good for me to have been there still. Now therefore let me see the king's face. And if there be any iniquity in me, let him kill me. So Joab came to the king and told him. And when he had called for Absalom, he came to the king and bowed himself on his face to the ground before the king, and the king kissed Absalom. So, all right. I can't get over this Absalom. David allows him to come back to the city, but he didn't see him. For 2 years, he didn't see him. And Absalom said, well, let me call Joab and have him bring me to the king, or have him ask him, why didn't he just leave me where I was? But Joab didn't come. And so he sent his servants to set fire to Joab's field. Joab's like, well, what did you do that for? He said, because I called you and you didn't come. Absalom is pretty full of himself, don't you think? 3 years in Geshur, 2 years in Jerusalem. David had not seen Absalom for 5 years. Lest he be seen as approving of his son's action, David revokes his palace privileges. All right, Absalom, you got away with your life. You're going to have to suffer some kind of punishment. 2 Samuel chapter 15. So we remember, Absalom had been standing by the gate, telling the people that came to see David that he would be a good judge if David had made him a deputy, that you have a good cause. And the Bible says that he stole the hearts of Jerusalem. Picking up at verse number 7. And it came to pass after 40 years, your text says 40 years, but it really ought to be 4 years, that Absalom said unto the king, I pray thee, let me go and pay my vow, which I have vowed unto Jehovah in Hebron. For thy servant vowed a vow while I abode at Geshur in Syria, saying, If Jehovah shall bring me again indeed to Jerusalem, then I will serve the Lord. And the king said unto him, Go in peace. So he arose and went to Hebron. But Absalom sent spies throughout all the tribes of Israel, saying, As soon as ye hear the sound of the trumpet, then ye shall say, Absalom reigneth in Hebron. And with Absalom went 200 men out of Jerusalem that were called, and they went in their simplicity, and they knew not anything. Verse 12, And Absalom sent for Ahithophel, the Gilonite, David's counselor, from his city, even from Gilo, where he offered sacrifices. And the conspiracy was strong, for the people increased continually with Absalom. And there came a messenger to David, saying, The hearts of the men of Israel are after Absalom. And David said unto all his servants that were with him at Jerusalem, For we shall not arise, and we shall not arise and let us flee, else escape from Absalom. Make speed to depart, lest he overtake us suddenly, and bring evil upon us, and smite the city with the edge of the sword. And the king's servants said unto the king, Behold, thy servants are ready to do whatsoever my lord the king shall appoint. The king went forth, and all his household after him. And the king left 10 women, which were concubines, to keep the house. And the king went forth, and all the people after him, and tarried in a place that was far off. Now David's on the run from Absalom. Verse 18, And all his servants passed on beside him, and all the Cherethites, and all the Pelethites, and all the Gittites, 600 men which came after him from Gad, passed on before the king. Then said the king to Ittai the Gittite, wherefore goest thou also with us? Return to that place, and abide with the king, for thou art a stranger, and also an exile. In other words, David said, this is not your fight. You don't need to be running with me. Verse 20, whereas thou camest but yesterday, should I this day make thee go up and down with us? Seeing I go whither I may, return thou, and take back thy brethren. Mercy and truth be with thee. And Ittai answered the king and said, as Jehovah liveth, and as my lord the king liveth, surely in what place my lord the king shall be, whether in death or life, even there also will thy servant be. And David said to Ittai, go and pass over. And Ittai the Gittite passed over, and all his men, and all the little ones that were with him. And all the country wept with a loud voice, and all the people passed over. The king also himself passed over the brook Kidron, and all the people passed over toward the way of the wilderness. Now, David is now on the run from Absalom. He seems to know something is up because, remember, David was crowned king at Hebron as well. He decided to send the ark back to Jerusalem along with spies to overthrow the counsel of Ahithophel, his once trusted advisor, who now advises Absalom. So we see, in spite of all that David has accomplished, his trials have not ended. We hope you're enjoying these lessons. We hope that you're growing by a greater knowledge of the Word of God. Please, please share these lessons with others like us and help us to spread God's Word over this fantastic medium called the internet. Tune in with us next week. And until then, we pray as always that you be careful and be prayerful. God bless you.
I get joy thinking about what he's done for me. I get joy thinking about what he's done for me. It's in my hands, my feet, I'm talking about what he's done for me. I get joy just thinking about what he's done for me.